I'll follow through from what Claire said and what the others, I guess we're singing from the same song sheet. But the successful clusters need to have a purpose, otherwise they're just a network. And networks are good, networks do great stuff, but they're different to a cluster. And the purpose can come from lots of different things. Sometimes it's just a gap in the ecosystem that they identify that they can move into or that they need to move in. Sometimes it's a belief about something that can be done and can be done better together than separately. Sometimes it's an opportunity that arises, and I think we heard earlier today from Lisa that small businesses often can't do things. They have to work with others and bring other talent groups together so those networks work. And sometimes there is a crisis, and I think John would probably tell you that HunterNet sprung out of an industry crisis. The other thing I think we've learned is they work better if they collaborate on a specific project right at the beginning. If my long-term memory serves me correct, one of the first things HunterNet did was identify a lot of businesses weren't competitive because they didn't have ISO 9000, and they spent a lot of work working together to get people skilled up because it costs too much to get consultants in for small businesses. And I think the other thing there needs to be some passion attached to it. If people just come together around a good idea, nothing happens. Somebody's got to drive it, somebody's got to be the person. We heard that this morning too. Now, I did my particular research process with two clusters. One is an amazingly successful group, and I'm not going to talk about them because Shakti Durga, who leads that group, is here. They've had a phenomenal growth and a phenomenal adoption of technology and creative industries together in the Hunter. Absolutely mind-blowing number of people have joined up in just 6 or 7 years, but she can tell her own story. The one I worked with was a regional engineering company. Because I know absolutely nothing about any of that, I dragged my husband along for the 2 or 3 days of interviews because he does know about stuff and he was able to translate for me. But they actually started also with a crisis, small engineering group in a small economy when a developer crashed. And it left 30 small specialist companies with terrible cash flow problems. These people just walked out of town, leaving a major development half finished, and a lot of small suppliers owed a lot of money, which is a story we hear from time to time. In actual fact, there were 30 businesses in danger of having to close. So what they did was very clever. One, everybody told them that they couldn't argue this in court. So these businesses gathered around and they supported one business to take it to court. All of the rest of them actually stepped forward to find small subcontracting jobs or take one of their staff on, and as a group, they went for this developer. And this company won. As a result, 29 of the 30 got their money back. Now, they learnt from that you could do stuff together that you couldn't do on your own. They then decided there was some value in that, and they set about seeing what else they could do together. So the first thing that they moved to try to do was to capitalise and leverage off the capacity of one of the lead organisations, a big company that had very sophisticated distribution systems because of the nature of their business, which was a small parts business. So they went for the efficiency model. And they're working together at the moment to see which of the other companies could maybe grow their business by using that distribution network instead of having to invest in creating their own. The time we were up there, there were 3 other companies that decided that they could work in under that distribution system and really create more markets, easy distribution, because in these regional areas they have poor rail transport. This particular one had a major problem, the way the road system worked, so they couldn't get deliveries easily. I guess we've heard a lot about customer needs, and maybe one of the things the RTA could look at is where they put their roads in terms of where industry actually needs it, and councils could look at how they zone industrial areas in order to allow for growth. They're projects they're about to set on. They've got that one underway, and at the time that we left, and probably as an outcome of our project, they had decided to see whether there are other ways that they could recover from this crash in the resources industry by becoming more productive. And so they've started an audit of their unused capacity, which they have now because they've lost a lot of jobs, they've got a lot of floor space, a lot of tools and equipment unused as they're no longer servicing the coal industry quite so well. And they did some capability audits. They were surprised at the capabilities they had in this fairly small town. And then they set about auditing the needs of the emerging industries that are coming into that region, which weren't there at the time they set up, and looking at how they could retool. Their next system was to go to what design solutions they could perhaps put in to cater for these emerging systems out of their current unused capacity and capability. Now, they're things you couldn't do outside of a cluster structure. You couldn't do as individual businesses, you couldn't even do with your mates. So for me, the things that I learned out there, for the cluster to work, you've got to have good IP protection, you've got to know how you're going to manage one another's knowings, you've got to be able to make decisions, as Claire said, or no, it was Julie, about competition processes. You had to work out whether you could make new products and projects by working together. You had to work out how you could share resources and skills. And the biggest message was you need to invest in the cluster. And I think that's one of the things from the group Claire looked at. You can't, if you join a cluster, be one of those little fish that hang off sharks. What are they? Remorers, aren't they? Because if you've got a school of remorers, nobody's going to go anywhere. You've got to invest in your own cluster with your time, your energy and your money, or just stay out and be a nice social network.
Okay. I'm just going to briefly summarise for a minute or so, and then we'll open for comments and questions. So from John's point, I think I've heard and sort of totally agree with, is the importance of trust from member firms and member representatives within the network. Because you are in competition, there is a need to obviously see that as a cooperation, as I said, co-opetition, to work together. And when you came together, obviously there were firms that were working closely, or maybe not so much with each other, but then had to work together for this to work. And as you said, Claire, you need buy-in. What's in it for me? Why should I come and give my time and probably your money to actually be part of a network or cluster for this to actually work? And I think that was a good, I suppose, example that you gave there, Evelyn, of the power of many, where a negative was turned into a positive, where people got together and actually were able to be innovative to have a process, that outcome that was positive for all. And I think one of the other areas that I've been looking into is, talking about the creative industries, is the co-working spaces. And that's happening very much in some of the sort of capital city or sort of larger cities. And I know they're starting up here. And they're very, I think, good for the creative industries, particularly because many people who work on their own, they might be isolated at home, are coming into co-working spaces, and they're finding what I referred to as the knowledge spillovers, something in the air that it was actually coined by Alfred Marshall over 100 years ago, that actually is causing more creativity and innovation to actually take place. And one that I've also been working with for a couple of years now, they are actually telling me that they're getting local government, they're getting industry, and they're getting the creatives coming in to work together. So the banks are even saying, can we send our workers to come and work in your co-working space so that we can get that spin-off sense of creativity and innovation that's occurring in your organisation? So thank you to the three speakers.